Yeah, we can absolutely move on to that, which is whether or not the season lived up to expectation. TLDR for me, yes, the season lived up to expectation. There's a lot of things that need to be defined individually within that sentence about whether or not the season did live up to expectation. I need to break down every syllable for why I said yes. Nathan, tell me what you think.
So in theory, I think it lived up to expectation just on paper, not in play, because at the start of the year, I looked at the Huskies as a team that should challenge for the North and could easily win the Pac-12 championship, which here we are. They technically won the North, yet they're not going to be playing for the championship. So that's where it kind of falls off of living up to expectations.
I mean, we challenged for it, right?
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying in theory they lived up to expectations, but then on play they didn't because they won't be playing for it. They only were able to play 4 games due to 2 games being canceled without being made up, and then the one did get made up with us playing Utah. So in theory it did. And then getting to kind of individuals living up to expectations, here's where I'll talk about Newton. Newton, he I've said on this show earlier, I thought Newton was going to have a huge year. I thought he was going to be the clear front runner for this team. He was going to be the breakout. At one point, I think I was throwing out numbers like 800 rushing yards on this short season.
I remember this episode.
And here, through 2 games, I mean, he was looking great. He had 23 carries, I think, for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns while splitting it. And lo and behold, that was the last time he touched the ball, a 52-yard touchdown run against Arizona. So he's, for some reason, got benched. He even got behind Cam Davis. The one freshman running back had a couple touches in the games against Utah and Stanford when Newton had no touches. So they changed from kind of a 4-back committee with Newton, McGrew, Pleasant, and Davis to really just McGrew and Pleasant kind of carrying the load. And McGrew, I thought he deserved his touches. He had 43 carries for 227 yards, 4 touchdowns. He averaged 5.2 yards a carry, which was the same as Newton averaging. Pleasant, on the other hand, I would have liked Newton to get touches over Pleasant. Pleasant, I mean, he had a decent year, 34 carries, 140 yards, which was about what Newton had on half the touches, or 10 less touches, I mean. 3 touchdowns to Newton's 2 touchdowns. So overall, Newton kind of, for some reason, didn't live up to expectations. He was in pads in both the games. He just never got on the field.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like that's to answer your question. I think it's Dubs is your name. We just don't really know what happened to Newton. I mean, he was suited up and he was the one who was on the field for both those games, just never played, right? He was suited and ready to go. Yeah, we just don't know what happened. I mean, as you know, Jimmy Lake has been extremely close to the chest with information regarding the team in terms of who's playing, who's not playing, who has COVID protocols and skill groups and whatnot. So at the moment, we really don't know too much other than that he's been suiting up and we can speculate from there. For McGrew, though, one thing I thought was really interesting is like his first game he played, he was averaging, I think, 10.1 yards a carry. And then his productivity just dropped. He went down to 5 and then he went down to 4. And then I think he bottomed out at like 4.5 yard average per carry. I think McGrew would have done absolutely fantastic if he could have kept up that performance and that amount of efficiency from that first game with 10.1 yards per carry. But I wish all of the running backs could have done better. That would have made the season a lot more a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable, I think, as well. In terms of the season, though, as a whole, I'm saying yes, it lived up to expectation. Living up, if you're saying expectations, mine were so low it would have been hard. I'm gonna finish this up and then I'm gonna get to your comment. But the reason I'm saying it lived up to expectation is we only got 4 games. We went 3-1. Bright side, we played more than 50% of our games. I think that's a blessing just out of the gate when you're a 7-game season and COVID's just demolishing teams left and right. Weren't any crazy bad outbreaks within the football program until very recently. Seattle Times article by Mike Farrell recently published stating that we need Pac-12 requires 53 available scholarship players, including a quarterback, 7 O-line, and 4 D-linemen to be able to qualify for competition. Due to a combination of a bunch of things involving COVID, the Huskies not only didn't make the 53-player scholarship 53-player minimum requirement, we had 0 offensive linemen. So, like, if he had released a roster, like a depth chart for the game day, at O lineman, there would have been no names. We just had no one to put on a uniform, whether a walk-on, a scholarship player, a transfer, a graduate student. We just didn't have anyone on the team for O line. That really sucked. Outside of that, though, having a winning season, challenging for the championship title, technically winning the Pac-12 North, I think that was a dub. Do you think Sam Heward will start as a freshman? Why do you think Igbuka, wide receiver, went to Ohio State? Why do you? I didn't follow Igbuka all that much. Why do you think he went to Ohio State?
So I think Emeka Egbuka, he went to Ohio State just based off of the history of Ohio State, kind of with their wide receiver development, which is something the Huskies don't have. The Ohio State's had the number one wide receiver recruit the past couple of years, actually 1 or 2 years, they've had the number one wide receiver go there. They already have the class of 2022 number one wide receiver committed to Ohio State. So Ohio State's kind of just a breeding ground, I guess you could say, for wide receivers. And Emeka, he chose that over kind of his hometown, home team, who hasn't really had a great success with wide receivers going from UW to the NFL in recent history. I mean, you can look at John Ross, he's kind of flopped. Dante Pettis, he's kind of flopped. Jermaine Kearse a while ago, he had 1 or 2 good years. So overall, he went there just for the overall like talent Ohio State can give these wide receivers and what they can produce after college.
In terms of Heward starting as a freshman, I don't know. That's competition. That's all fall camp. I don't even know if Morris is going to start next year because of how much talent and depth we have at the quarterback position right now. It's going to be a challenge. I mean, knowing Jimmy Lake, knowing those guys, and my high school coach, talking about them and how they operate, it's absolutely an up to the day of the decision. They're going to measure everything. They're super holistic coaches, and they want the best possible choice for every position, and they leave that up to their players to decide who's the best. And yeah, again, Nathan, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, SI April of this year, they did who the new wide receiver U was. I think Clemson won, but Ohio State was right behind them at second. I mean, UW just didn't even make the list. So that's probably why he went there. He just wanted the better wide receiver stats, better wide receiver training. Supposedly, I'm not saying they're better than us with wide receivers. I'm just saying that's supposed. It's what everyone in the country is saying.
And for your next question about Peterson being the Ducks next, I don't think Peterson's going to coach again. I think he's fine just with his nice cushy job here at UW, making a good amount of money, not really having the stress of coaching.
Yeah, I absolutely have to agree with that. But talking